The Nintendo Switch is getting really old, and it's obvious that Nintendo is working on the successor of the Switch. During the last few months and even weeks, there have been numerous reports, leaks, and rumors about the Nintendo Switch 2, what it could be, what it can do, what it can't do, when it's coming out, what the price might be, and I thought now would be a great time for me to jump on that train, come up with a list of 10 things that I would personally like to see in the Switch successor, and talk a little bit about it. So that's what I did. Here's 10 things that I would want to see in the new Nintendo Switch console. And keep in mind, these are not necessarily realistic predictions, just some things that I would think would be really cool. Let me know in the comments if there's something that I didn't mention that you thought of that you would like to see in the new Switch. And let's go. Number 1, backwards compatibility. Over the years, the Nintendo Switch has built a huge library of many games, of which there's some not so great games, but also a number of really great games. Many people, including myself, have accumulated quite a collection of games for the Switch, whether that would be physical or digital. And at least speaking for myself, I would want to be able to keep playing those games. This is something that I took for granted when I was growing up because I could play DS games on the 3DS, for example, or also PlayStation 1 games on the PlayStation 2. It is nice not having to keep your old console on the desk when the new console has already come out. That way you can play the new games on the new console, but also use the same one to play older games that you might still want to go back to every now and then. For some games it might even show an improvement in performance, like Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild, and some of the Pokemon games like Scarlet and Violet, where there have been people that used, I think, overclocked switches, and even though the switches were only slightly modified, the games were able to run a little bit better. Although Pokemon Scarlet and Violet might need a little more helping than just a little extra horsepower. That's like putting a band-aid on a big flesh wound. Number 2, new and improved controllers. For me personally, I think the new controller is usually one of the more interesting things about a new console. Sure, it's also going to be more powerful and look cool, probably, but you can't really do a lot with it without a controller. That's what you use to navigate through everything. So I think the controller always plays a big role in the experience that you have with the console. Nintendo always goes the wacky route with controllers. The N64 controller, for example, that you basically need a third hand for in order to use it. The GameCube controller that, even after 20-something years, people still swear by. The Wii that literally uses a TV remote looking thing. Or the tiny little dual-wielding Joy-Cons that you have on the Nintendo Switch. Basically, there's always something very weird, wacky, strange, but at the very least, unique about Nintendo's controllers. And that is something that does excite me. I'm not that big into controllers, as most of my friends can probably confirm. Right, guys?
The fuck?
Talking about controllers though, I hope that they will also address some of the issues that we currently have with the Switch's controllers. The main problems that I currently have with the Switch is connectivity issues and stick drift. On both the Joy-Cons and the Pro Controller, there have been numerous reports of people having issues with their sticks. That does include me, even on a brand new Switch Pro Controller in the Tears of the Kingdom design. Their newest release. It released alongside The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, and right out of the box it had stick drift. When the Switch first released, I remember there being reports about connectivity issues on the Switch, and then people being like, yeah, you have to make sure that there's nothing in between your console and the controller for it to work properly, but that's pretty annoying. I will say though, in the last couple of years, I haven't really heard a lot about that, and I thought that somehow got patched or something. But recently, me and my girlfriend both have issues on our Switch Joy-Cons. We would experience issues in the connection between the console and the controllers, those being the Joy-Cons. And this can be quite a pain in the ass if you're playing something and then your controller is just unresponsive or just completely disconnects from the console. So this is an obvious thing, but I do hope that Nintendo will address these issues and we won't have these problems on the next controllers. Number 3, keep the physical games. Now this goes alongside the backwards compatibility thing, as you would still need some kind of cartridge reader. They could do a DS, 3DS type of thing where they have almost the same cartridge, but then have like this little extra thing, and then you can use DS games on the 3DS, but cannot use 3DS games on the DS and can't even put them in the DS. There's a lot of smart people working at Nintendo. I'm sure there's going to be someone who's going to be able to figure that out. Xbox and PlayStation have started releasing consoles that don't have a disc drive anymore, which means they kind of force you to buy the games digitally from them. I prefer, and always have preferred, physical games. I do like keeping a physical collection of games, because that way I can lend the games to other people. I can borrow games from other people. I could sell the game if I don't like it anymore. I can also buy used games, and therefore they will be cheaper. And I also feel more attached to the games when I have them physically over digitally. I don't exactly know what it is, but when I play a game digitally, I don't necessarily feel as attached to it and as involved in the game anymore. This makes it so that games that I have digitally, I might not touch that often or don't have the motivation to finish them. I also feel like I don't actually own it. I can't touch it, and at any moment the company, like in this case Nintendo, could just revoke my license or somehow prevent me from playing it, which I guess would be possible from physical games as well through some kind of patch or so, but I think that would be way less likely. I also think that for Nintendo, it would be probably the easiest out of the three companies to keep physical games, because usually most of Nintendo games or games for Nintendo consoles aren't really that big. There are a couple of gigabytes, maybe like up to 20 or so, but not really bigger than that for most games. Whereas on the PlayStation or the Xbox, there's games that are over 100 gigabytes, and that's 3 times the storage of a normal Nintendo Switch. So with Nintendo's consoles and their games being pretty small in size, that means that the cartridges don't cost as much, and therefore Nintendo might want to keep the physical games, and also more companies would be willing to put their games on a physical medium as opposed to only offering it online. Another aspect that involves games being A, physical, and B, pretty small, is that it's easy to just buy a game, plop it into the Switch, and within like 5 minutes or so you can play. With a lot of other games on the PlayStation, for example, you have to first put the game into the console if you bought it physically. You have to then install it from the disc to the console, and then you might still have to update the game with the newest patch, and that is often 20, 30, 40 gigabytes in size. Now your 10 p.m. gaming session turned into a 3 a.m. annoyance, and you have no motivation or excitement left to play because you are tired and just want to go to sleep. With the Switch, I don't really remember putting a game into the Switch and having to wait more than 5 minutes tops in order to play it. Number 4 is achievements. Now this is something that I don't really see happening because, as far as I know, no console of Nintendo ever had a system-wide achievement system. There have been some games that do feature achievements, but that's about it. I really like getting achievements. There's something about this pop-ups being like, hey, you got something, you did something nice, that's great, yeah, good job for you. You killed 10 bosses. You beat the game on hard difficulty. You beat the game without using any weapons. Achievements can either prolong your playthrough or make you want to go back in again and do more challenges, do all the side quests and all these things. It is a satisfying moment that I miss with Nintendo's games sometimes, especially because a lot of Nintendo's games have a lot of collectibles. Take Mario Odyssey, for example. There's a lot of optional moons that you can get. There's a lot of purple coins that you can get to buy costumes. Those could be achievements. Or in Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom, the Koroks, for example, the amount of shrines that you do. All of this could be achievements in my opinion. And the good thing is, this is only an optional thing. You don't need to do the achievements, but if you want to, you can do that and therefore play the game longer in one playthrough or do multiple playthroughs to get more of the achievements done if you want. Number 5, actually normal cloud saves. Just having normal cloud saves would make things a lot easier, especially if you yourself have multiple consoles or want to log into someone else's console. This is a convenience thing that is quite frustrating on the Nintendo Switch at the moment. Some games support cloud saves, once you manually enable them. Other games will have you transfer over the entire user data of one console to the other console in order to access those save files. If I remember correctly, that is what I had to do with Pokemon Sword or Shield, either one of those. I started the game on a friend's console, then later wanted to continue playing on my own console. When I booted up the game on my console, I had to start the game from scratch again, even though the user that I used on the Switch of my friend was linked, I believe, to my Nintendo account. So please, with a Nintendo Switch 2, or whatever its name might be, please give us normal cloud saves that work as they should. Number 6, improved online infrastructure. The online mode in Super Mario Maker 2 and the raids in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet and also Sword and Shield, they are a lagfest and they are not fun to go through at all. Now, to be honest, I have not really played a lot of online games on the Switch, but anytime that I did, it felt awful. We're in 2023 now and Nintendo still lags behind all the other competition. Xbox and PlayStation seem to have had that figured out for years now, while Nintendo is always lagging behind. Now I do know that it's probably no focus of Nintendo, but it's still at least some aspect, and I think there's also more multiplayer games coming to the Switch. Like there's Fortnite, there's Apex on the Switch, presumably Call of Duty coming to the Switch, or at least the newest Nintendo consoles. And those obviously are also online games. I don't know if they run on their own servers and Nintendo has their own servers that these games don't run on, but why can't we have good online infrastructure on Nintendo's own games like Mario and Pokemon? I'll also say that my bad online experiences with Pokemon and Mario Maker kept me away from Splatoon. I would usually be interested in trying out Splatoon, but I would want to play these games online, and I don't really want to spend 40, 50 bucks or so on a Splatoon game and then have the online be trash. Number 7, better friend and party system. We do have a friend system on the Nintendo Switch, and it serves basically no purpose other than looking at the playtime of other people. Apart from that, I have not found much use for it. And if you want to play a game with someone, like for example you want to raid with people in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, it's not like you can just create a party and play with these guys. No. You have to go through an in-game party system where you need a code from the friend, and I don't even know if it matters if you are friends with a person on the Switch, so there's no purpose in the friend system on the Switch for this game, at least. I don't play Fortnite or Apex on the Switch, these kinds of games, so I don't know how they handle it, but I imagine it's just through the in-game lobby system as well, and it doesn't really matter if you are friends with someone on the Switch itself. But it shouldn't be like that. You should just be able to go in your Switch's friend list, invite someone to a lobby, and then play something with them. I don't know why it has to be so difficult on the Switch. Because of that, there's also no voice chat on the Switch itself. They would want you to use a Nintendo Switch app on your phone. And to be honest, up until recently, I didn't even know that existed. I also can't really imagine that a lot of people use that. If you already have to download something on your phone, if you want to talk to other people you're playing with, why not just use Discord, TeamSpeak, or even Skype? I think any of these things would be better than the Nintendo Switch app. And you probably already have at least one of these apps installed anyway. Number 8. Decent games on release. When the Switch first released, it came out with a couple of games. Most of these games are pretty forgettable, except for Breath of the Wild. I think that game carried the Switch in like the first half year or so. I am hoping that the next console will have 2 or 3 games that are pretty good. They don't have to be on the level of Breath of the Wild. I think that would be very unreasonable to think that they would release these games already, but at least give us something that is good. When I first wrote this script, we did not know of Super Mario Bros. Wonder yet. So I wrote that we don't have any info on any new 2D or 3D Mario game. So I thought that they were saving all of these games for the new console, which they still might be. Mario Bros. Wonder could also come out on the next console, and we still don't know of a new 3D Mario, whether that would be Mario Odyssey 2, a whole new thing. Sunshine reboot maybe, Mario 64 reboot, although I don't think they will ever do anything like that. We also don't know of Metroid Prime 4. I mean, we know that it exists and is in development, but it's been in development since 1969 or something. And I know that a few years ago they scratched everything and began from the beginning, but still ever since then they have not shown a single frame of the game. I think we only have the logo, and that is it. This leads me and many other people online to believe that they are saving all of that for the new console. Also, there is not really a dedicated Mario Kart on the Switch. Yes, I know that we do have Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, and I know that it will be forever the best-selling Switch game, but that's basically a Wii U title that was just brought over to the Switch, included the DLC that was already out, announced new DLC, and added some more stuff, like the double items, for example. So a Mario Kart 9 might already be done, and it might come out when the new console comes out. I want to say again, I don't expect Nintendo, and I don't want them to, release all of these games when the Switch 2 or whatever comes out. If they give us 1 or 2 of these games on release alongside a few other small games, or maybe not release but in a short period after they release. I just don't want the new console to come out, buy it, then I get it, I open it up, and then I'm like, oh, this is so cool, this new flashy toy, but I ain't got no games. Number 9, a tech demo-y kind of game. Some consoles, when they release, come out with a game that shows off the new features of the console. This could be Wii Sports on the Wii, Astro's Playroom or Astro Bot, I think it's called, on the PlayStation. The Switch also almost had that with 1-2-Switch, except that one cost $50 and people didn't like it. Usually these would be included for free with the console to show you, hey, these are the new things, go try it out. I think these tech demo games can be really good. Normal gamers might just have something to play around with, and on the PS5 it's even like a whole game basically that you can enjoy. You can also get familiar with the new features of the console or the controller. And then for people who normally wouldn't really be into games, they might see that at a friend's house, they try that out and they're like, oh, this is so cool, I didn't know this works, that I can turn the controller and something happens in the game, or you can shake it, you can blow onto it, things like that. And this might get them hooked on the console. They might go ahead and buy one for themselves. It's also important what kind of feature the console or the controller offers, because the Switch, for example, has a few features that are basically unused or have very niche use cases, like the right Joy-Con. On the bottom of it, it has an infrared reader. And I can only think of one game that ever used that, and that is 1-2-Switch. For one mini game, I think, where you eat a burger and do this into the controller. By the way, I forgot to mention that when I talked about 1-2-Switch. That game got a sequel, Everybody 1-2-Switch. This one only cost $30 or 30 euros. And here in Germany, on Amazon, it was already at 20 and 25. And the reviews also show that this game isn't really any better than the first one. So I am hoping for a free tech demo game on the new console to show its new features. It could be like Wii Sports, a sports kind of game that many people enjoyed, but it could also be a fun little adventure like on the PlayStation 5. Number 10. Nintendo Switch Online integration for NES, SNES, and so on. Nintendo has built a pretty good system for their retro games. If you are subscribed to their Nintendo Switch Online service, you get access to a variety of games from different platforms. This includes games from NES, SNES, N64, Game Boy Advance, and Sega Mega Drive, for whatever reason. And there are still games being added every once in a while. Just recently they added The Legend of Zelda Game Boy Color games, I think Oracle of Seasons and Oracle of Ages or so. Being able to still access all of these games on the new console would be amazing and also a good thing, because I think otherwise it would be a huge waste if Nintendo just dropped that and just left that on the Switch without ever thinking of bringing that onto the Switch 2. This is also something that is really good for game preservation, as some of these games are for consoles that are very old, and not everyone who has a Switch will have all of these consoles and these games. Some of these consoles and games are hard to come by, so being able to access them on the Switch right now is really good, and bringing them over to the Switch 2 would be even better. And who knows, we might even get access to more platforms like maybe GameCube or DS. I think that would be really, really sick. Apparently in like some kind of Nintendo investor meeting, they already said, or at least showed, that they were keeping their online structure for future generations or future platforms. So I hope that includes these Nintendo Switch Online platforms. And that is it. This was my personal list of things that I would personally like to see Nintendo do with their next console, which I imagine comes out sometime next year. I don't think they will go through 2024 without a new console. I'm very excited about what Nintendo is cooking up behind the curtains right now. And I'll be even more excited once we officially find out what these things will be. It might be interesting to then come back to this video and see how wrong I was in thinking any of these things would be realistic. Let me know in the comments if there's anything that you thought of that I haven't thought of that you think could happen or that you would personally like to see. That is all I have for you today. Thank you very much for watching, and I wish you a great rest of the day. See ya!